I love the question. I love the question because for more than 30 years, I have had a self-perception that I am existentially oriented in what I do. So what do I mean when I say that? And so I think there's some key themes that existentialism brings into high relief for me. I think first one is responsibility. Of basically, it's a philosophical perspective that says we are responsible for our own lives and actions, and I think that's a really important premise of existentialism. I would also underscore authenticity. And by authenticity, I think one of the richest things I took from existential readings is that it's about releasing yourself from conventional wisdom, sometimes from the dogma that may be part of maybe the world that you grew up in, maybe the religion that you learned as a child or whatever. There is this theme of authenticity means it's your job to think through any set of beliefs and practices for yourself and not have them handed just to you. So that's about both being responsible, but also it's about living authentically, what I would call marching to your own drummer. I've always liked the ideas of vulnerability that are, I think, embedded in existential approaches. And by way of background, let me just insert here. I did not grow up in an intellectual world at all. People did not use words like existential. In the world in which I grew up, it was a kind of, working class, immigrant, hardworking group of people who were farming and ranching and that sort of thing. And so this was something I came to through things that I read and thought about. And one of the ideas that started sort of penetrating my thoughts as I became more educated was the idea of existential throneness. And I've always liked talking about that with my students when I'm teaching them about adult development or personality, or I like the idea of existential throneness because it starts out with very palpable, easy to comprehend ideas. We don't choose our parents. We don't choose the place in which we come into life. That is part of, the existential throneness, where we enter on this stage of the human experience. And I've always liked that because that actually takes us into the fact that, maybe you're born disadvantaged in, possibly profound ways. And yet it is nonetheless your responsibility to actually begin to perceive that and understand that and make meaning about it and find your way through it. So I very much like these ideas of vulnerability, but I think in college, it was mostly the writings of Camus that I think pulled me in the direction of existentialism, the myth of Sisyphus. And I don't know, in one of his books, I remember reading and just being struck by this sentence that, like, you're in a boat and out in the high seas, and to be basically the idea of the absurdity of beating the sea with rods, as if that would have any impact, that would do do anything. So creating these ideas about, we actually, life is unfair in many ways. Horrible things happen to people. There's a lot that's beyond our control. And yet it is nonetheless not just our responsibility, but it's our privilege to interpret it and decide what we're going to do about it, and try to make meaning as we find our way through this journey. And so pivotal in my thinking about these issues as relates to my research, but also my life, was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Just like, okay, wow, you want a really dramatic example of horror that you have been, dropped down into, and, my God, what I feel like the book, and the reason it's been read by millions of people all over the world, is because it is really astonishing. It's astonishing that in the middle of all that, now, he was a psychiatrist by training, so he's a very educated man, but he nonetheless knew that even though he couldn't control anything that was happening to him, he could control his reactions to it. And he could, and indeed felt obligated to make meaning about it. And then, went on to create this whole form of psychotherapy, logotherapy, that is really about finding meaning in adversity. And so, I really love those ideas so much. I would say, I want to say that I think that, I don't live just by existential philosophy. And I'm kind of I shop around, and then I create this kind of potpourri, this melange of philosophies that I think have been helpful in my life and my work. And there's a way in which I think, existential philosophy it's almost laughable in the extent to which it can be viewed as like so negative and so ponderous, and like you need to be like a chain smoking Sartre kind of writing books about being and nothingness. I mean, it's just like, what an awful title. So there's something about I don't know, let me call it hardcore existentialism, that it's not like I find it off-putting. I find it funny. I find it funny because it's too much about angst and anxiety and, the traumas of life. That's why, I also pull in humanism and, a variety of other things. So I guess I'm basically saying there's a lot, I think, that to me, they're like simple ideas, clear ideas, maybe not simple, but clear ideas that actually can become, aids, and important aids in how you make your journey through life.